So I had a client come in and talk about how his wife was just completely irate at him. He had left our last appointment and learned all these things, went home and told her, and she just freaked out. She's like, "Do you realize I told you all of that years ago?" See, his wife is in the mental health field, and she did her thesis on something called the Adverse Childhood Experience Study. And we had talked about it and how it's showing up in his life and all of that. And, he's sharing all this great knowledge he learned. And she's like, "I did my thesis on all of that years ago, and I gave it to you." Well, he never read it. And isn't that, for all of us, we have these people close to us and they don't listen to us. And it feels incredibly rejecting and devaluing and upsetting and hurtful. It's like, wait a minute, I love you, I care about you. Why won't I had a solution for you years ago, and now you're paying this guy to give you the solution when we could have had these conversations years ago. And we kind of laughed about it. Now he's paying for it. And yes, I got his permission to share this story. But why does that happen? Why do those closest to us not listen to us when we can offer them so much help? Well, there's a reason for it. See, because all of us struggle with self-esteem, no one's immune from it. It's part of the life condition. None of us are bad, but it's something we all struggle with. And because of low self-esteem, we have high denial. See, we don't want to know the truth about ourselves sometimes because of low self-esteem. It's like, I don't want to admit this part. I'm not ready to absorb this truth. Denial is a lack of truth in our life. And so when we're in denial, we're not in truth. And so when somebody offers us a suggestion that could help us and we don't listen, it's because, wait a minute, I would have to admit, denial is I don't want to admit who I really am. It feels like an insult that maybe I don't have this information, or, we'll tend to, our low self-esteem will say, I'm stupid, I'm dumb, I should know better, right? It's not true, but that's the battle we're in. And so we don't want to listen to somebody because if they have a solution and I haven't thought of it, it's a huge, massive attack on my self-esteem. And so you're looking at politics, you're looking at no one's listening to each other. Well, that's low self-esteem, high denial. They don't want to admit the truth of their imperfections. And so the point of this video isn't to slander people that are doing that. It's to rescue you. We've all had that experience of somebody not hearing us. And it feels so insulting to us, which is also a sign of our low self-esteem, because they're not rejecting us. They're not devaluing us. Do you see the dilemma they're caught in? They're hurting. They're afraid to admit their imperfections to themselves, and they don't want you to know it because they don't want you to reject them. And so the reason they're not listening to you is because they're scared to admit they don't know this information. And so think about that the next time your spouse, someone at work, your boss, you give them the answer and they completely ignore it. It's not a rejection of you. It actually has absolutely nothing to do with you. They're just in their own battle of, their denial, their low self-esteem and the denial battle. And that's why the answer for all of us is to become an expert in those imperfections we have. Because do you see what happens? When we admit the truth of how beautifully imperfect we are, what do we gain? We gain self-acceptance, which is self-esteem, and then we can forgive ourselves, which is self-esteem. So the solution, like every time we don't listen to somebody or that happens to us and we feel insulted by it, that's an opportunity for both sides to confront their denial, the truth they don't want to admit about themselves, see it, accept it, forgive it, and from that, our self-esteem rises, and then we'll be able to hear more. So I encourage you, give the person who's not listening to you some grace. They're just in that battle. They're doing the best they can. They're not bad or wrong. They're just like we are. Everyone's just doing the best they can. That's all we're ever doing. All right, and right now, they're not quite ready to see that truth about themselves. That's all. Well, God, we can all relate to that. There's just certain things I don't want anyone to know, and I don't even want to know myself, right? So that's all that's happening to them. They're not rejecting you. And so my hope in doing this is to bring you some peace. That when somebody isn't listening to you, it's really they're not listening to themselves. It has nothing to do with you. And so maybe you can feel a little bit more okay when that happens. All right? I hope that helps you. Have a wonderful day.